Much, and I'm Guenel Rodi, as you all know now, just in case you're taking a nap. But I just want to start thanking again the organizer, particularly the Fondation Mérieux. Just to be clear, I'm not from the world of vaccinology. I'm primarily from, I've been work before and at WHO for a long time now on emerging infections and on the international health regulation issues. So, and today I'm more involved in country preparedness to health emergencies. So that's my background, so please forgive me if I'm not totally right on things related to vaccines. But I can rely on support from some WHO staff in the room. I don't know, Anna Maria has disappeared. I think Raymond has disappeared also, but I still have Sylvie Briand here, who can help me, and others. Let me... Also, on the panel itself, we're not yet there, but I'm going to simply invite them, or you will invite them. Just to say, we're going to go more in the field, in a way, following up on the presentation by Rino Rapplioli and also Lila Griffiths, talking about very concrete things and discussions we have to do when we're dealing with emergencies and vaccine issues. So we'll have, looking at lessons learned and what we could do today, we'll have Dr. James Elston, who is from the UK, as an ID physician and just back from Sierra Leone for the third time. I understand you went several times on site. So maybe, I don't know if you want to come now or later on, what's the agreement? Maybe just come so we can occupy the space here. We'll have Dr. Joao Bosco Siqueira, who is over there, who is going to join us and bring with him the experience of Zika in Brazil. As you all know, I don't think we need to go into detail on Zika. But it's, as an emerging disease, it poses specific challenges when it comes to surveillance, for instance, and also maybe the question of should we have a vaccine already for this particular emerging disease. And then we have Dr. Newman Kandu, who is actually has a link with Zika, coming because he's a member of the IHR International Health Regulations Emergency Committee for Zika, which has a much longer title, but I just say Zika. It's much simpler. So on my side, I just want to say we're going to try to address a number of very practical questions, some may be difficult, and we use the expertise of the panel, but also hopefully from the audience, because many of you, I'm sure, also have experience about addressing the issue of vaccine in the context of crisis, health crisis, but not only. So I just want to maybe as an introduction to say that there are different situations we face, and maybe the panel here faces some different situations. I have to say that unfortunately we see an increase or increasingly common some of this health crisis or simply crisis with health consequences that are challenging all of us. The first situation is the issue of routine vaccinations, which are simply disrupted by crisis. I think a good example here is all the or the headaches sometimes we have with polio eradications. If you look at where we stand today, we have problem primarily it's not by surprise that it is in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in northern Nigeria, where we know we're facing actually a serious crisis, which directly disrupt and hamper the vaccination program and potentially the entire eradication effort. So we just need to take that as, I think, very serious issues when it comes to the risk to miss potentially polio eradication just because we cannot tackle the last few bits of eradications. So that's one type of setting. The other setting is the vaccine as part of the response to a crisis. Some crises obviously require vaccines. I think measles is often proposed for internally displaced populations, for instance, that sooner or later will be in need, and so measles vaccination is often there. But we just faced, for instance, recently yellow fever crisis in Angola and DRC, which also illustrate these issues of, in fact, what should be routine vaccinations. It's actually amazing to have an outbreak of yellow fever these days when we know that we have efficient, actually lifelong vaccines now, affordable, and simply for whatever reason, the routine did not work, and we had this vaccine as part of the response. This is very much associated with populations moving, population under stress, population where water and sanitation are not there. So this crisis lead to also an higher risk for epidemic-prone disease, and actually many of them are vaccine preventable. The third situation is vaccine as preparedness. I think the illustration of H1N1, and I think Indonesia, Dr. Condon may have some experience on that. How can we stockpile for a vaccine or prepare, knowing that a particular event will occur? I will not mention the ICG mechanism, the International Coordination Group for Vaccine Provisions, which has been set up by WHO a long time ago together with MSF and the Red Cross, and of course the industry. But this is a mechanism to prepare for an epidemic which is not yet there. But I think the issue is when you may remember H1N1, many countries did stockpile some vaccine and were heavily criticized afterward to say, well, that was a waste of money because it was not so severe, and then why we did not use this money to treat TB patients or diabetes patients. And I think I just want to raise here the issue of in health security, security has a cost. Nobody complained when fire extinguisher has to be renewed, even if the house did not burn. But when it comes to health security, public health, we are not yet in that paradigm where we can invest in intervention that will simply build our health security. So I'm saying that because we are all talking a lot this morning about health efficacy. This is an issue where when it comes to security, I think we have to look at other arguments, rational, not just the efficacy and the proper use of money. Security, again, as a cost. And then another situation I want to highlight, it was partly raised this morning with Anna Maria, is the issue of this window of opportunity we have during a crisis, during an outbreak for vaccine development, for R&D issues. And Ebola was, again, a good example. Zika, maybe it's the second example. But this is also an interesting and important issue as we work I was myself in Guinea helping actually Ana Paola, when we work in difficult conditions when it comes to following up adverse events, when it comes to having the consent, the full consent of the population, etc. So that's 4 situations I hope we have a chance to address through the presentations, but also through the discussion later on. This is not totally a new issue, this problem of crisis, but I just want to raise the fact that the SAGE group on immunizations, that many of you are probably familiar with, has set up a working group, a multi-stakeholder working group to try to look at vaccines in this context. And the Assembly, the World Health Assembly, actually last May, say very clearly WHO should provide guidance on implementation of immunization program and immunization strategies during conflict and chronic disruptions like we have today, and the department or the program I belong to works also and follow this with UNICEF and other partners in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, etc. So this is I think this is the issues. I think the point is to just clarify the landscape we are going to try to address, being about the landscape of vaccines, but also the landscape of context, because it varies with different vaccines and different contexts, and it's not necessarily the same solution we have when it comes to the rationale for using a vaccine, when it comes to community access, when it comes to competing priorities. And I think it will be interesting to see how you will react to competing priorities, to limited resources, to the vaccine availability, the vaccine characteristics, the logistic issues from including security potentially, and then the overall surveillance issue, which is so important to decide to use a vaccine, but also to monitor the impact of a vaccine. So I stop here just to give you a flavor of, I hope, what the discussion will be. And I leave the floor to the chair.
Thank you, Dr. Rodier. So the first speaker, or the first panelist, is Dr. Sorry, I have to find my paper here. Okay, it's Dr. James Elstone, who just came back from Sierra Leone 2 weeks ago, I think, and he's gonna talk to us about the Ebola crisis And for those who don't know, Dr. Elstone is a UK-trained infectious disease physician who has undertaken dual specialist in public health. He is currently working as a field epidemiology fellow for Public Health England in the north of England. And we all know that the Ebola crisis has generated more than 28,000 cases with more than 11,000 deaths. And really, this is a situation that has been impacting the public health and the public sector quite substantially in the three major countries, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. So, Dr. Elstone, why don't you come and give us your thoughts about this outbreak?